Hey guys, Troy Casey, Certified Health Nut. In an effort to bring you more fun, freedom, and phenomenon, this is the Certified Health Nut podcast. And today we have Luna here to talk about natural birth. We're going to talk about C-sections. We'll navigate the poison injection conversation so we don't get censored. And I am at the biocultureretreats.com retreat. It's a holistic retreat with my friend CVC Wellness on Instagram and Dakota. They put together an amazing retreat. It's basically a holistic mastermind of creators, influencers, brands, etc., and all very healthy, vital humans. And today we have Luna. She was one of the first people I met here. And when she started telling her story, I really resonated with it. As many of you guys know and followed me on YouTube for the last 2 decades, I started out in the Amazon and also did natural childbirth. So we're doing plant medicine in the Amazon and natural childbirth, and had some viral videos go out then. My son Troy, who's 17 now, was born in water in my house, no circumcision, and he is a very balanced, amazing human being. He went through the Waldorf school system. We're going to talk about unschooling, homeschooling, all the choices for parenting that you may not be aware of. And so at Certified Health Nut, we help people wean off the commercial systems that are basically cutting our life support energy systems off and get back to holistic roots, all things natural. The force that created you is the force that heals you. And so without further ado, hi, Luna. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into natural childbirth and really understanding parenting from a holistic or a more balanced perspective.
Yeah. So just to back up, I was living a heavy city life back in the day, New York City, and then COVID hit, and my husband and I decided to live van life, so do a complete 180. His job went remote. I ended up quitting my jobs because they weren't able to be remote. And that completely changed the trajectory of our entire life. We spent the next 2 years living on the road full time, and through that experience was also at the same time during COVID. Mm-hmm. So everything was about health, was about fear, and we were thinking about getting pregnant within the next 2 years. And so I fortunately had a lot of time to really dive into the research on COVID, on just health in general, mm-hmm. and think about how do I really want to raise this child that we're thinking about bringing in to this world. So through that, I just started crushing podcasts, crushing books, and
So let's stop there for one second. Were you into holistic health? Were you into nutrition? Were you into fitness at all? Nothing. You were...
I was relatively, I thought I was healthy, but I really wasn't healthy. You know, I was dealing with chronic yeast and BV infections. I had asthma my whole life.
What's a BV infection?
Bacterial vaginosis,
yes.
Yeah.
Were you vegan?
No.
Okay.
Never vegan, but I had methylating issues I later found out in life. And it really wasn't until I started diving into the holistic realm, which happened while we were living on the road, because I was trying to figure out why is everyone so afraid of all the hype and
the hype about
the pandemic.
Right.
And
the plandemic.
The plandemic,
as I like
exactly.
to call it.
Yeah. So why is everyone so afraid of this when there's all these doctors saying that there's all these easily accessible solutions?
The frontline doctors mm-hmm. that were on the steps of Congress early on, and it got 18 billion views, and then it was scrubbed off the internet, and subsequently my friend Mickey Willis made it into a 4-part movie series, and he just finished the musical, which is doing really well, and so plandemicmovie.com.
Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough to be able to tap into those things I saw before they were scrubbed. And so I was able to pull a lot of information and start to really learn about what was really going on. And that is what opened the door to holistic health for me. So I started, supplementing, getting our food right, getting a ton of outdoor time because naturally we were living van life. So we just spent our time outside all day. And through the process of living van life, I became a lot more spiritually in tune than I was before living city life. And just having the mental break from being in the city, it was so healthy because we were so detached from everyone's fear that our friends who lived in the city had from just like being around other people. They were so afraid. And we were completely disconnected from that. And we're so grateful that we were, because it really gave us the space to figure out what's really important and what life really means and how we can be healthy. And so then that's when I really started diving deep into natural wellness and testing products and seeing what was working for me. And then I later ended up working with the naturopath when we were done with van life and healing myself and really experimenting with different holistic alternative medicines and having a lot of incredible success and eventually easily being able to get pregnant and having a beautiful baby.
So you got results from the holistic lifestyle. And so, and you were living in Brooklyn, Manhattan at the time?
I was living in Manhattan.
And what kind of industry were you in?
I was a makeup artist and also doing real estate.
Okay. So plenty of high stress, high strung, and you entered out into the van life. Did you go south? Did you go somewhere warm or the mountains?
We did all the U.S., minus some of the middle, and all of Baja, Mexico. It was incredible.
So you start living the holistic lifestyle, diving into it. First is probably some education, then you tested it out, you got some results. And I'm here to remind people that fertility issues are through the roof, both with men's sperm count and with women. And a lot of that has to do with stress. And then we've got the postpartum element as well, which is related to nutrition, Hashimoto's, all sorts of postpartum issues. And so take us through your pregnancy and then your awareness towards taking holistic health into your birthing process.
So I wanted to cleanse my body and detox as much as I could before I got pregnant, because you supposedly aren't really supposed to detox much while you're pregnant. So I took that time to, do some parasite cleansing, some heavy metal cleansing, and just make sure, got my minerals and vitamins tested. I found out I was completely deficient in vitamin B12, even though I ate a lot of meat. So I learned I had methylation issues. I was vitamin D deficient, which was interesting because I spent a lot of time in the sun. So there was just things I learned about myself that were really important. And I'm really glad that I ended up testing myself and figuring out what was going on before I started doing all the cleanses. And it was really successful. I ended up healing all of my chronic, weird vaginal issues, completely gone. Have never had to worry about that ever since. I did vaginal ozone, which was really helpful for that.
Were you on the pill, or did you do a series of antibiotics over your lifetime or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that was one of the main reasons why I was so chronically sick, even though on the outside you would think that I appear as a healthy person.
You're asymptomatic and healthy are two different things.
Exactly. So I grew up on just a never-ending round of antibiotics. And then as an adult, when I got BV, I just had to continue taking antibiotics for that because the doctors had no other alternative form of helping you with BV. And then I discovered boric acid, which was really helpful, but it was also like a Band-Aid. It still wasn't quite getting to the root cause.
Borax baths or?
Borax baths would have been great. I didn't know about that at the time, but no, just actual boric acid suppositories. I mean, that completely changed the game for me. So very happy and blessed that I discovered that.
Does it have a brand name?
Well, now it does. At the time, it didn't. When I first discovered it, I was making my own capsules. But now I think Love Wellness sells them.
Okay.
And it's so helpful for women who are really in a pinch and don't want to take antibiotics. But ultimately, it's still a Band-Aid, and it's not going to fix it. It's not going to get to the root cause. Taking certain probiotics was wildly helpful. The brand Jarrow probiotics, not a suppository, you just swallow it, and that
Acidophilus?
really changed the game for me. And what was the last thing you asked about?
Just the protocols that you went through to heal that, because you said the suppositories were more surface, but helped. But so systemically, you did You did probiotics. And what else? Did you start eating kimchi and sauerkraut and stuff like that too? Or
Yeah, started drinking kombucha, started eating all organic.
like not messing around, like real organics? Because people are like, oh, organic doesn't mean anything. And I'm here to tell you it does. What about you?
Oh, yeah. Organic is a big deal. We only buy organic in our household. That shifted a lot of things for us. And
organic whole foods too. I think we really need to define these nuances because people think, oh, it's got an organic stamp on this box of processed foods, but you're talking about farmer direct whole foods.
essentially not eating processed junk at all. And especially sugar. That was really helpful too. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought of where we're going with
So
this.
so you're healing the bacterial infection. Did you know you wanted to get pregnant at this time? So you started healing yourself for the purpose of having a baby.
Thank you. Yeah, so I wanted to make sure I didn't have parasites. I mean, we're all in symbiosis with parasites to a certain extent, but if you've never done a parasite cleanse in your entire life, that was something that I thought would have been important to do before getting pregnant. So I did that, and then also did some heavy metal chelation because I found out I had high levels of lead, which was really interesting because, I didn't know I was sick. It's one of those asymptomatic things that would have probably caused a big problem later on in life. I'm glad I caught it early on now.
And for the baby too.
Yes, exactly. So, of course, my husband was so kind to join me in EDTA chelations we did to clear out heavy metals from our body. And
EDTA and glutathione, or just straight EDTA? And what was the form that you did that in as well?
it's an IV.
You did EDTA IV. Okay. So heavy chelation, like medical chelation.
Yeah, working with the naturopath, we did EDTA IV chelation and found that was the best way to really test the accuracy levels through the urine after the EDTA chelations. You can test through the urine that way.
How many rounds of that? Like, what was the process of that? Was it year long, or was it one time, one and done?
I did it for, it depends what your levels are. So everyone's going to be different. I did it for about 6 months, every other week, because I had such high levels of a whole bunch of things, but lead was my highest issue. Yeah.
Okay. And so, and then you cleared up and got pregnant, or?
Yeah, we had the date scheduled because I had been tracked. Well, I forgot to mention, I was on birth control for 10 years. Yeah, sneakily got on it in high school. Mom found out. And I just stayed on it till I was 25. And that's the year that I had met my husband and got off of it. And just getting off of that alone was wildly helpful for regulating all of my vaginal issues.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like night and day, huge difference. And a lot of friends that I speak to, as soon as they get off of it, because now a lot of my friends have gotten off of it over the last few years, they notice a massive difference in their health, way better. And so I turned everyone on to the temperature oral thermometer as a way to track your ovulation, because you're only pregnant for a certain amount of days during the month anyway, able to get pregnant for a certain amount of days every month. So you don't need to be on the pill if you're really hardcore about tracking your ovulation. And now you can just use this ring instead of having to take your temperature, because taking the temperature can be a little bit annoying.
Bit of a science project.
Yeah.
Instead of taking a pill, we go back to the old school way of understanding our cycle, yeah?
So that was really great to really learn about my cycle. And fortunately, I was able to, as soon as I got off the pill, I was able to become regular right away. And so we scheduled, as soon as we were done with van life, we were able to buy a house in Utah. We decided to settle down because that's where my family is. My husband loves to ski and snowboard, so it was a no-brainer for us. And we put it on the date, like I'm ovulating this weekend, and we got pregnant.
Wow, with intention.
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, I asked my wife's permission at the time and asked her if she wanted to get pregnant, and she said yeah, and I was like, okay, and we basically conceived. It was on our honeymoon. So and so yeah, okay, so continue with the magic. And had you started researching alternative ways of birthing, or did this just come natural, or were you getting results with holistic health? So you're like, well, let's have the birth natural. How'd that work out?
I was fortunate enough to actually have a sister. I have a sister who's 9 years older than me, and she was living in London when she had her first 2 babies. And in London, they work with midwives. It's just a totally different system. So she got turned on to it. She ended up having 2 natural births, 2 natural water births. And that is what opened my mind to it a while ago. So I kind of always knew about it. And then by the time that I got pregnant, I had already been really interested in learning more about that way of birth. So thanks to my sister. And I think it's always someone is, one of the best ways to really get through to people if you hear of someone who's done it.
Well, that's why, I'm so grateful for social media and the people I've been able to connect with, because my birth video had 450,000 views or so. So, and then there's been a couple viral videos explaining my choices with my partner at the time and how we went down the whole road of making that decision. And a lot of that came from my research. Obviously, it's her body. Everybody out there in TikTok land that wants to comment on that. Of course, it's her body, but I definitely did the majority of the research and then presented it to her. And then obviously we made decisions together. And I just wanted the best experience for her. And I chose healthy options for my child as well.
And I think that's so great that you were so involved, because I think that is a little bit unique. From what I see, the men don't seem to be as involved at all, really, with the birth decision-making process. And of course, it's the woman's decision at the end of the day. But I think it's so beautiful when couples dive into it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand with some of the confusion and the ignorance and the commercialism and that's just the way it is, and the television shows of the stirrups and the screaming and the beeping and the fluorescent lights and the hospital and, Days of Our Lives and the soap operas and the television shows and the movies, and it's like all this screaming and blood curdling, the baby's coming, and hours of labor. And we got in the tub in my living room, and 20 minutes later, little Troy came out, and it was magical. And you can still watch it on my YouTube channel. And so again, go ahead and take us down the rest of the process.
So I met some girl at some festival party who was there with her child, and it was so inspiring to me. And this was right before I got pregnant, and my husband and I knew we were wanting to get pregnant, and it was so inspiring to see her there dancing with her little baby in the forest. And I was like, wow, I want to be you, and she was like, you need to watch this movie called The Business of Being Born. Yeah. And so that was the first door that really helped me find a lot of the good natural birth education that I ended up stumbling upon. And it's really hard to find. You actually have to go on Vimeo and pay for it, but totally worth it. So The Business of Being Born, highly recommend.
It used to be, or at least the trailer, I think, is on my natural birth playlist on my YouTube channel. Is that Ricky Lake's film?
Yeah.
So Ricky Lake's film, and I do believe Nassim Harriman's partner at the time, and I met them. I went out to the Big Island and met them. She had an orgasmic birth, right?
I don't recall if it was orgasmic or not.
She was in a tub, I think. And
in her bathtub.
I think, if I do recall that movie correctly. Anyhow, so you saw The Business of Birthing, and you can find that on Vimeo. And
so that just cracked open the door of learning about how the medical system makes money off of birth and the statistics that come along with that. And it just seemed like it was potentially actually safer to consider not being in a hospital to give birth, which is crazy for people to think, but that's where all the statistics actually show. Like if you're into science, that's what the science says. So then I found this podcast called the Natural Birth Podcast. Highly recommend. I listened to it every single day while I was pregnant, walking my dog in the morning. And it's women's birth stories. Mm-hmm. And it's not all natural birth stories, because some women have 4 kids and their first 2 kids, let's say, were in the hospital, and then they moved on to their natural birth journey. And just hearing other women's stories, and generally were not fear-based at all. I made a very conscious decision to not put a lot of the fear-based birth stories in my mind on purpose. And hearing other people's stories actually gave me so much empowerment and ultimately really helped guide me when I was giving birth. And then there's...
How so?
Well, we can get into that when we talk about the birth,
Okay.
actual birth story.
Okay. So go ahead. You were thinking about...
I'm thinking about other incredible resources I have. Let me look at my phone really quick because there's a whole list I give people.
So you watched The Business of Birthing and listened to the podcast. What was the name of the podcast again?
The Natural Birth Podcast.
Okay. Is it still running?
Okay, let me just look. Take a quick. Oh yeah, I did a lot. Is it okay if I look at my phone during this part or not really?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, the editors will fix it, but this is authenticity. Let's give them the data for sure, so that you guys have good resources.
People ask me all the time, how do I prepare for natural birth? Because they see on my social media that I've done it before, and I'm pregnant now. I'm 6 months pregnant and going to do it again. Only the first birth I did at a birthing center, and now I'm comfortable enough to do it at home. So the list that I give them is definitely start off watching the documentary, The Business of Being Born. That's going to give you a whole education about the whole medical system. And I think it's so important for the men in their life, if there is a man in their life, to watch it with them. And then listening to the Natural Birth Podcast every day and reading Ina May's books, Guide to Childbirth and Spiritual Midwifery, as well as Birthing from Within by Pam England. Those 3 books, it's really all you need. You don't need to read all of them, but any of them would be wildly helpful. And taking a course, the Bradley Method course, you can take with your partner, highly recommend. You just learn about your anatomy, and it's really bonding to do with other couples as well, and to do with your own partner. And then
this also fosters a powerful family bond.
And then one of the most important things that helped me while I was actually giving birth was having taken a hypnobabies or hypnobirthing child course. That was like probably the number one thing that helped. But I'm glad I did everything else, because everything else was educational and made me feel empowered because I knew what I was doing. But the hypnobabies or hypnobirthing course, it's essentially the same thing. That just gave me tools in the moment to be able to give birth. So they're totally different things, but all really, really important.
Because you don't know what it's like until you're actually in it, yeah?
Yeah, you have no idea. You're like preparing for this thing. You have no idea what to expect. And once you do it, it's not as scary.
Well, you're equipped, and we don't get taught that in school, but we have magnificent bodies, and this is a very powerful spiritual co-creation.
I think one of the main reasons why women end up not having success with what their initial birth plan is because they didn't spend the proper amount of time actually educating themselves about all the resources that I listed. Unfortunately, women are busy, especially if you already have kids and you want to learn about it. But even if you don't have kids, you're busy with work and you just don't put in that time. I think it's really important to prioritize if you can.
Well, I think it's important. It's our bodies. It's our children that we're bringing into life. And I think the same thing goes with parenting. We don't want to abdicate our responsibility to the state, because as we're seeing in the world today, the state doesn't really care about us. Sure, they'll help us in their little way, corral us into the commercial conduits, but that's not always good for our long-term survival.
Definitely not, especially if you look at the birth rates in the United States. I mean, it's horrendous.
It's good for business.
Very. So other things I highly recommend, and what I did is I made sure to build an incredible birthing team. So
yes, this is very important.
So important, so incredibly important. Even if you do end up giving birth in the hospital, you still want to have a doula there.
Yes.
A doula who you are totally aligned with.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up interviewing like 6 different doulas before hiring mine, and she saved my birth. And we'll get into that when I talk about my birth story, but she like single-handedly saved my my natural birth. So you want to have a midwife there who you love, and a doula there who you're really aligned with, because she's going to help be your advocate as best as she can. And, you know, some people don't even have that. Some people free birth, but essentially those are the 2 people that you really want to make sure you have.
Right. So I can bring in my experience a little bit. So our second child we wanted to have in the home as well. And my ex-wife, she had preeclampsia. So we ended up at the hospital early. The doctor induced the birth, and things moved fast from there. And they wanted the birth to happen. And they were going to give her a drug that dilated the cervix. Do you know what that one is? I think
Pitocin?
I think it was Pitocin, and our representative, our friend was a doula, and she came in and said the CDC, you know, listed that as a potential problem. And they went from, no, we're going to give this, and this is a good idea, and you should do it, and da-da-da. And she came in and questioned them, and they stopped trying to push that on us. And they moved into the next thing. And my ex-wife, she told me, I want to go for the epidural. And I said, whatever you need, you know, go for it. I'm here to support you. And so she took the epidural. She didn't have an epidural for my son. She took the epidural. It didn't work. And they don't tell you that in the hospital. They don't tell you that at all. Sometimes it doesn't work. She went for the second injection because they offered her another one. And then the baby came out at that time. And our doula, I don't think, was there at that moment. I think she was down getting coffee or something. And I turned around, and my baby had the antibacterial cream on their eyes. And I was like, what is that? Because I went to console my wife, and I turned back, and my daughter had some kind of medicine on her eyes. And I said, what is that? And I kind of knew that stuff like this would happen. And I said, don't touch my child unless you talk to me first and foremost. And so they were all on their toes. They wanted me to sign some documents. I was like, I don't know what these documents are. I'm not an attorney. How about no? And they didn't like that. And then the HR person came down after a day or two of that, and they kind of tried to like coerce me into it. And I was just like, no, because I could see that I had the power then. And then also, if you hear about hospital deaths, it's one of the top ways human beings die. Mistakes, malpractice, the wrong drugs for the wrong patient. They get the patient mixed up. So when I walked into the NICU, the intensive care unit for the babies, everybody knew who I was, and everybody knew who my child was. And that's the exact position that I wanted everybody in. Prime directive was latch baby to mama and get out of Dodge. And we did that in about 5 days. So mission accomplished. And grateful for whatever the hospital presented and helped us out with. And I have a very healthy child right now, but from that point on, there was no more of these sneaky medicines that I have no idea what they are. And I like to trust God in my decision makings. And anyhow, so let's continue with your story.
Yeah, people often forget they do have the power and
Yes.
to not sign their life away, especially at the hospital. Yeah.
Because they're not thinking of your long-term survival. For the most part, I would say 99% of those types of decision makers, you're going to be the best decision for your child, your body, especially if you have any knowledge about the hospital systems. And so I avoid the whole situation like a plague. I'm my own doctor. I teach my children to be their own doctor, and I avoid all commercialism as much as possible.
Me too. So I actually didn't even have an OBGYN in my entire pregnancy.
Great.
And I still don't have one. And it's actually not something you need if you have a midwife, because they can do all the blood panels that you would normally do. And it's actually like less invasive, less tests than you need, which is really nice. So when I tell people I never even had an OBGYN and I still don't, they're shocked. Like, you don't need one as long as you have a midwife that can do the test that you want.
Well, and you actually healed your bacterial vaginosis. I mean, that's a pretty big deal, because what does typical commercial doctors do? They give you antibiotics.
Yeah, they never had any other solutions for me at all, ever, over the years. So, yeah, at that point, you just have to take your health into your own hands. So I had a really incredible pregnancy. I was so lucky. I never got morning sickness, and just because all my friends and my sister and everyone gets it so bad, I know that I'm so lucky. So very, very, very grateful and blessed. And I don't know if this is true, but I've heard from some holistic people that I follow that it could be tied to a magnesium deficiency. So if you are having morning sickness, that might be helpful for you. And I also never had any food cravings, which is kind of interesting. And I think
No peanut butter and bacon chocolate sauce soup?
No, like peanut butter and pickles, or I don't know, carrots and mustard. And I think that that's due to the fact that I was supplementing every day and just really making sure that I had all of my minerals and vitamins and nutrients, and that I was eating really healthy, nutrient-dense food. And that's just my theory, but it makes sense.
Well, I will corroborate that. My partner was Korean. Her mother came out for a month after the children were born, and she made seaweed soup religiously 5 times a day for lactation. It's laver, shiitake mushrooms with a kombu and sardine base, 5-minute kombu and sardine boil. And then you take those materials out, and then you put the laver in with the shiitakes, and you soak the shiitakes, and then you boil it for like, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours, pretty hard boil. And then you put ground meat in it, and it's so delicious. But I got to tell you, I was like, wow, this is amazing food. Your mom could come over here anytime. I'm like, yeah. She flew over from Korea, and after a week, I was completely burnt out on it. And my wife would just eat it 5 times a day, and she was nursing, and it really helped her. And that's just mineral-rich materials right there. I mean, the original superfood, seaweed.
Yeah, sounds like your ex-wife had a really good mama.
Yes, I mean, that's another thing with our modern day society, is that our immediate family is gone, and then it takes so much energy to have children. And then we were solo except for the 2 months that she came over there.
And I bet that was life-saving.
Oh my God. I mean, it was so life-saving. And then as Waldorf parents, when people in the classroom would have children, the whole school would make meals for them. And so there would be like 2 weeks of like catered meals for the new family. And I thought that was an amazing part of Steiner's work, and real community-based stuff, because we live in a like dog-eat-dog little Hunger Games going on right now. It's everyone for themselves. Everybody's got to work, and it's like there's no time for this very sacred, process. And it's also an exhausting process for both parties. The sleep deprivation, the needs, I mean, the baby suckling, I mean, that takes a lot out of mama, and you see what happens to the soil. And so we need as much nutrient-dense materials as we can get into the body. And so talk a little bit more about the magnesium and you not getting morning sickness.
I just made sure to take all the supplements, all the choline and good sourced fish oil and multivitamins that was in a bioavailable form. And I felt so good my whole pregnancy, and I loved it. It was magical.
Do you have a recommendation or a list that you send to people that follow your work? And what is your Instagram, by the way, or how can people?
It's Sunny Luna Living.
Sunny Luna Living. And is that where people can find most of the information?
Yeah, exactly. I post a lot about all my birth story there, so you can find me there.
Okay, awesome.
So while I was pregnant, what I really wanted to do to make sure I avoided a hospital system birth, because generally if you go to the hospital too early, then that's when the cascade of interventions can start. So you want to wait till you go to the hospital if you're having a hospital birth, or want to wait till you call your midwife if you're working with a midwife, until you're really ready to have the baby. So you want to labor at home as much as possible until, I think it's like every 5 minutes you're having contractions or so. That has been the biggest help for my friends who do hospital births, who, I try to get them to do home births, get them into the whole thing, and they're more comfortable with the hospital birth, even doing the epidural with the hospital birth. Totally great, love them, support them. But they do follow my advice where they stay at home as long as possible until they reach that every 5 minutes or so. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but between contractions, and then you go. Because if you go a little bit too early to the hospital and you're not quite ready, as soon as you get to the hospital, they start you on a time clock. And then that's when, if you're not progressing as fast as they want you to, that's when they're going to start giving you medicine. And then, things oftentimes, more often than not, do end up leading to C-sections, which would have been unnecessary if you waited longer, and then ultimately are life-saving, but didn't need to happen necessarily to begin with if you approached it differently.
Yeah. Do you really need medical intervention from a natural process? And our midwife had us walking, even though my ex-wife did not want to walk around the block again in labor. I remember being out on the street and her going, oh, like that. And people were stopping like, are you okay? But the midwife was like, outside, get those hips moving, open up. And it was arduous because I think she started contracting, I think about 4 a.m. in the morning. Midwife was there within the hour. And she had us walk in the morning. She had us walk in the afternoon. And then we got back in the tub and the baby came. So we were moving till the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so good to have movement. And that's something else I don't love about most hospital systems is they don't really let you move much or drink or eat anything. And that's not how it is at a birthing center at all. You can move as much as you want. They encourage that. They help you come up with new movement ideas, and you can eat and drink as much as you want. They'll feed you as much as you want, which is really nice.
Yeah, I lived in Santa Monica at the time, and we had the Santa Monica Farmers Market, and I went shopping that day and came home with fresh grapes and other natural foods and ate right from our house. And after the midwife left, we were in our home. We were comfortable. We went to bed and just slept, and it was like Christmas every day for that first week, because there's the baby, and it was pretty magical.
Yeah, especially if you have help.
Yes.
So I went to bed at around 11 p.m. and then my water, I put myself in bed at 11 p.m., but I didn't actually fall asleep, and my water broke at midnight. So my water broke at midnight, and that's when I started having contractions. And because of all the research I did, I was like, okay, this could be prodromal labor. Let's not rush anything. I'm not even going to wake up my husband. Let's just wait it out and let's not get excited. I'm just going to fall back asleep. So tried to sleep, wasn't prodromal labor. I was definitely in labor. And eventually, after a few hours, around 3 a.m., I had to wake up my husband. Babe, I need help. I can't do this anymore. Start doing counter pressure. Call the doula, see what she says. And so then we started timing our contractions and, realized we still had some hours to stay at home and work through it. So, and it wasn't until about 6 a.m. that we went to the midwife center, the birthing center. So I labored at home for, 5 or 6 hours. And I'm so glad I did. And then I went to the birthing center, and my midwife and doula helped me, and it was a really interesting experience. We did all these different positions, but at 8 centimeters, we realized only then that my baby was breech.
Oh.
Yeah, surprise.
Wow. I've been working with Maori healers for many years. That's where I got my understanding of natural birth and midwifery, and they're all midwives, whether they're male or female. And they say that the breech babies make the best healers because they're the most grounded. They come feet first.
Oh, I love hearing that. My baby didn't come feet first. He came balls first.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, balls first.
His legs were back, or they were just
He was in a Frank breech.
okay.
So his bum was like this. He was bum here. So his ball sack was out first. It was so funny because everyone was trying to figure out what it was. And then once his bum came out, then his legs fell.
Okay.
And then the rest of his body.
Okay. So
So it was great, but it was just interesting because I was working with a licensed midwife, and so initially she said, "Oh, shoot, your baby is breech. I can't help you. Like, you have to go to the hospital." And I was just like, "No, that's not happening." But she legally cannot help me, and it's really common for licensed midwives in the U.S. to not be able to legally even be in the same room as a breech birth if it's their own practice.
so what happened? The baby came so quickly, or
No, it took a while. It took me like 2 more hours.
so the midwife left?
So the midwife, during the actual birth, she could be there beforehand, right? But actually during the birth, right before the birth, my doula consulted with her outside and said, look, like, she is totally calm. Like, this is what she wants to do. She doesn't want to go to the hospital. The baby's heart wasn't in distress at all. My doula was educated on breech births, fortunately. And so they knew of an unlicensed midwife team that they could call, and they just happened to be available. So very last minute, this team of incredible unlicensed midwives that do breech births all over the state every day came over and assisted me. And my amazing licensed midwife just allowed me to be there, and she did have to step out of the room during the actual birth. And then as soon as the baby was birthed, she came right back in and continued her job.
Wow. That's such a beautiful story. I mean, it's so heartwarming that people were there to really help, right?
Yeah,
And they
amazing.
have a knowledge base, and so
They do it all day. Yeah. Throughout the whole process of giving birth, it was long, it was hard, the hardest thing I've ever done. I just kept telling myself, like, this is temporary as far as, the pain levels go. And I just kept telling myself, like, this is going to be over today. So, like, there is an end in sight. Like, I know I can do this. And of course, right before you give birth, you think you need to go to the hospital and get an epidural, right? That's just like how your brain works. You just are like, okay, I got to bail. I can't do this. But if you have the right team around you, they're going to encourage you to stay and to push through if you're feeling genuinely well and you are healthy enough to continue to be there. Because some women do need to get epidurals to sleep to be able to continue the birth process. And I totally get that and respect that. But so I'm just so grateful that it ended up happening the way that it happened. And it felt so empowering. I felt so empowered. And listening to that podcast that I was mentioning earlier, that's what all these women say. All these women that end up eventually having this natural birth experience that they crave, it feels so empowering. And I've never felt more empowered to do anything. I felt like I could do anything after that. Even though I was literally exhausted, like couldn't even move, so tired. Mentally, I just felt so strong. And then one of the things that was really surprising was this feeling I never felt before, but I did end up having a lot of women there helping me because I had the unlicensed midwife team there, and then I had my licensed midwife team there, and then I had my doula, and then I had my photographer, videographer, and my mom and my sister. So I didn't initially want a lot of people in my room, and I did end up having a lot of these women in my room, and it ended up being great. Every single woman there played a really important role. They were really quiet the whole time because those were my wishes beforehand. And it didn't feel like a lot of people were in the room, but something that I experienced that I'd never felt before was this like amazing, beautiful, like magical support system from these women during the birthing process. Like I could have never done it without them. And it was just such a loving feeling that like I can't wait to have that again when I give birth for my second one, because it's just so special and not something that you feel like ever really.
So what's your big What's your big message to women now that you've had that really empowering experience and we have so much fear and media propaganda that childbirth is painful, which it is, and I'm not trying to say that I know anything about that because I've never experienced that. But we've been through this historically, mankind. We didn't have hospitals 200 years ago. And it sounds very empowering, a huge rites of passage that you went through. You realize how strong and resilient you are. And so what is your big message now to women out there, and how are you connecting with people on social media?
I like just sharing my story with others. Other women who are thinking about having kids are really interested in hearing these types of stories. And my message to them is just that if this is something you actually want, you can totally do it. I mean, you're built for it, but you do need to get your mind right if you do want to do it. Don't just do it willy-nilly because, our bodies are born to do it, I can do it. You really need to get your mind right. You need to know your why. Why do you actually want to give natural birth? Why is that important to you? Is it because you don't trust the medical system? Is it because you want to become more in tune with your body and just experience it to the fullest and not be numbed up by drugs? Like, is it because someone else in your family did it and you just have this instinctual belief that you can do it? Like, tap into that and really figure out what your why is and get your mind right, because it's all mental. Birth is all mental.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, like 80% of it. Yeah. 80% is all in your mind.
Well, that makes sense. I work with a lot of high performance athletes as well. And I mean, achieving great things is a big part of it's mental, and mind is an embodied process. So if you're telling yourself it's going to be hard and difficult, it probably will be. And if you tell yourself you can do it, and I think what you said is you brought a lot of cognition and built a really solid team around you of consciousness. And so you were supported in many ways. And how was your husband through the whole process? Was he in the room with you as well?
Yeah, he was amazing. He was so great. I'm really grateful for my doula because she was able to do the counter pressure better than him. Even though he practiced, kind of sucked at it, was not doing good enough.
Can you explain the counter pressure?
Yeah, so when you're having a contraction, your uterus is expanding, and so that's like when the pain happens. And so to have somebody behind you, there's all sorts of different counter pressure positions, but generally to have someone behind you and pushing your hips inwards as your body is expanding, it just makes you feel a little bit more relaxed, releases some of that tension, and that is a really great method of dealing with the pain, as well as doing the hypnobabies or hypnobirthing course, because that actually teaches you techniques of how to breathe through it and how to get through it. Because as soon as you're through a contraction, you're not in pain. You're totally fine. You feel totally normal. It's just during the contraction you need to stay mentally strong and have techniques to be able to get through it.
Awesome. So thank you for sharing so much. What is your big message to women today, and what is the essence of your work and your Instagram, your social media platforms? What are you doing online?
So my social media started out with our van life. So it used to be all just van life, but now it's transitioned into family life. I don't show my kids' face online, like we'll blur them out, but it's just showing our holistic lifestyle now. So if you follow me, you'll learn about how I live a more healthy, holistic life, and you'll be able to follow how this home birth is going to go and everything that follows, breastfeeding, all of that. And it's really just how we're living more in tune with nature. And eventually we have big plans to eventually get back on the road part-time, but we want that when our kids are a little bit older and we can just open the door and run them outside.
Yes. That was my big strategy as a father, was when, we're in the house and there was too much going on and you're trying to get work done and they just won't let you. And I would just strap them on the backpack or put them in the stroller, or I had a bike with a seat on it as well. And I would just go out and let them play on the beach, let them play with sticks and rocks, and they would just, for hours. In the house, they would try and throw their trucks and cars against the windshield, against the windows, and make a whole bunch of noise. And but when they were outside, they were completely content. And so, can you talk a little bit about, you had a boy or a girl?
I had a boy. We named him Forrest, and I'm pregnant with another boy.
Awesome. Can you speak a little bit about your research into C-sections and circumcisions and what your decisions were on that?
So my research into C-sections was primarily from the business of being born, just learning about the statistics of how the cascade of interventions oftentimes leads to that more than not, especially when you're on this time clock. And I didn't want to be induced. And in order to schedule your hospital due date, you're scheduling your induction date. That's what that is. And so, yeah, I just didn't even want to go there. As far as circumcision goes, what I learned is that it's just completely unnecessary. It's just completely unnecessary, unless it's a religious belief. And if it's not your religious belief, it's not actually making your kid healthier to cut off part of his penis. And women do it just because that's what everyone else does. But when you really look into it, you're cutting off all these, the most sensitive parts of him. And supposedly there's all these potential mental things that effects it can have for them later in life. And it's also just a very, it's not a fun thing to even be a part of. My friends that do circumcise their kid, they have nightmares about the experience.
Barbaric.
Yeah, I mean, and if it's your religious belief, that's great. And if you just want to do it just because, okay, that's your decision. But as far as health goes, the research doesn't really show it doesn't actually make them healthier, if that's your concern. And then as far as the vitamin K shot, that's where the whole vitamin K shot comes into the conversation, because every kid is going to be offered the vitamin K shot. And as far as my understanding goes, if you are going to be circumcising your kid, then that's when you can consider giving them some sort of vitamin K something. I still wouldn't recommend the vitamin K shot, but what I would recommend is just waiting a certain amount of days to do the circumcision. I think 10 days or something after they're born, instead of doing it immediately. Then you can kind of just avoid the vitamin K shot altogether. But we didn't do the vitamin K shot, and we did just vitamin K drops, the liquid. I just did it at home. But I don't even think he needed it, honestly.
Yeah, my research in all of this extra fuckery, as a medical term, it was too confusing after a while, and I just wanted to trust in God, ultimately. And the cons outweighed the pros, and I just wanted to trust in nature. And I was circumcised. I think there's definitely some desensitized elements that I'm living with. Premature ejaculation. There's all sorts of, I can get into the psychological aspects of how we don't teach our children about sex, about life, about making life. And I talk about that a lot on my platform. And I just think that the more attention and intention paid to the sacred element, the entering to the earth plane spiritually, I'm here to trust God, trust the process. I went all natural. My son's an amazing human being. I educated him. I also want to talk about education with you and parenting. I educated him with the Waldorf school system. I wanted the brain development, the imagination side, the problem solving to be elevated. I opted for no screen time as much as possible. And my son is 17. He is the most intelligent, heart-based, I love him so much. He's just a good kid, I just love him. And both my kids are amazing. And I did the least amount of commercial, medical touch points as possible. I mean, they basically have rarely seen a medical doctor, you know, and they are so healthy and so strong and living a holistic lifestyle. And I have one of my coaches is Montauk Chia's one of his top guys, and he teaches sexual kung fu as well as Taoist energy practices, inner alchemy. And this is the coach for my son as he's coming of age and surrounded by pornography on social media. I mean, the internet. I mean, it's there. The kids are getting exposed at a very young age, and I wanted him to be able to talk to somebody about his puberty, about his coming of age. You know, I'm going to give it to him straight when it comes to sex and talk how I'm going to talk, but I'd rather hire a professional and be like, this is a person that you can talk to and be open with. And I also did the same thing for my daughter. I'm a man, she's a woman, I don't menstruate. And I got her a woman Taoist teacher as well. And they love their coaches.
I love that.
And I'm just like, yeah, talk straight to them. And my daughter's now in a Montessori school, and my son's following his dream of playing hockey in the NHL, and they're just following what they're creative at and what they love, and they're so intelligent. And I bought them bicycles since they were so small, and you know, kids don't play outside anymore, and my kids play outside, and they can ride themselves to school, and I can give them money, and they can go to the store and buy organic food, and so I think it's just, you know, the proof is in the pudding. So can you tell us a little bit about your research into schooling, unschooling, parenting, brain development, et cetera? Like, what are your choices around that?
My personal choices are to not put him in public school and not put him in your generic private school as well. It's essentially I'm left with unschooling, homeschooling, or some sort of schooling institution that is aligned with certain beliefs. Like Montessori, I'm really excited about putting my kid into Montessori soon. But yeah, there's a school called Acton Academy I'm looking at for him that uses the Socratic method and is very entrepreneurial based. So really excited about that. And he has a lot with that school. You can decide what you want to learn instead of just learning whatever they're going to teach you. So it helps kids stay in line with their intuition. That's really what I want as a parent, is to not let him lose his touch with himself, with his intuition, with his natural abilities, with his natural gifts. I want him to find those and not lose that.
His innate intelligence.
What he's born with, what he's gifted with. I want to help him discover that. So I don't know if homeschooling is for me, although when we are living on the road, and again, this is in the future, you know, when the kids are older, when we are going to be living on the road every few months out of the year, I will be doing some sort of version of homeschooling then. And then for the rest of the year, probably putting him in some sort of schooling that doesn't follow the standard system at all.
Yep. That pays dividends. It's been my experience. And I've done my best to spend every day with my children since they were born and keep them close to my heart. So the one good advice I read from all the books, I mean, there was one book that was telling us, don't co-sleep and wean your child by sticking him in the crib and letting him scream all night. I was like, no. Oh my God. But the best book and advice that I read was keep them close to your heart. When they're younger, they don't understand language. So the closer you can keep them to the heart, the more they can feel your vibration. And when they're older, they don't want to listen to you. So even if you can get closer to them on the couch or just somehow get them into your presence, and that's what I do. Even my children are teenagers now, and when we have arguments, I just tell them, you know, that's not the relationship that I choose to have with you, and I have my own temperament issues, and there's certain things that I want. I know that you might not understand them, and I try and be as logical as possible, but ultimately I just hug them and kiss them and tell them I love them as much as possible, and call it a day at the end of the day. And I grew up a little bit differently. I grew up on the street. I'm a little rough around the edges, and I definitely tell them how it is, because when they get out into the real world, people aren't going to be, they're going to be straight up as well. And so it's better to be prepared. I like giving them heavy doses of tough shit, because that's what's going to happen in life. And it's not hard, tough shit. It's just no. How about no? Good old no. And so, thank you so much for joining us. Please, your final messages, your websites, what's your big message from your whole experience, and where can people follow you and your websites?
Let me think about what my big message would be. So my big message would really just to be, if you're ever lost, just reconnect with nature. It's so simple, but it's what happened to us when we were living van life. It just reconnecting with nature, put your feet on the earth, get out in the sun, eat real food, support local, organic, regenerative farms, stop buying from the grocery store if you can. Healing our earth soil is my number one passion, and something that I talk about in the business that I have called Ecosis. You can find that at ecosis.co, and you can follow me at Sunny Luna Living, and you can continue to learn more about how to live a more holistic life, how to live more in tune with nature, and not be living in the middle of a cabin out in the woods, still be living amongst people in a city, but being able to live more of a toxic-free life and with community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I look forward to, because I love content, I look forward to the van life part 2.
Yeah. You're going to have to wait a little while, though, because we're planning on having a lot of kids.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I need a washer and dryer while I'm in the baby making phase.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're going to need a big van life.
We're thinking Airstream.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll get you a sponsorship.
That'd be great.
High five.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Troy.
Yeah. Good work. Good work. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, guys, we're done. That was good. I wonder how long that was. Woo! How'd you feel?